As someone who after all has white skin color, there was a time when white supremacy will feel comfortable enough around me to be spouting all kinds of about other minority groups. At the time, for fear of being shunned away and excluded, I would choose to stay quiet, which I now am even ashamed to admit. I no longer do that shit. If they now have some saying from me, I will stop and right on their tracks. In fact, ever since my awakening, most of them no longer want anything to do with me anyhow.
Oh, so fabulous.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel once again. It's your girl Dumebi. If this is your first time coming across my channel, you're welcome. I do hope you decide to subscribe, and if you are a returning subscriber, you guys know that I love you. It's so good to have you here. Welcome back. So my usual disclaimer, please, this video is strictly for educational purposes. Do not go searching out the people that I talk about in this video. Don't send them any form of hate comment, threat, or violence. This channel does not support any of that. So we're going to be talking about this Latino. He's Puerto Rican, and I came across his page recently. He has had a few videos that have been blowing up, and he has very strong, controversial takes on a lot of things, and his content is very political. I try to stay away from political stuff, but sometimes you know that when you're talking about racism and equality and stuff like that, politics kind of like finds its way in. So today I'm going to be playing various videos by this man, because a lot of things that he says basically are tackling white supremacy, and they are talking about racism and people of color and stuff like that. So the first one that I'm going to play that struck me of his videos was where he talked about when he realized he wasn't white. So let me play the video.
When did I find out that I really wasn't considered to be white? Story time. For those of you who do not know me, I was born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico. The reason I have an accent is because English is my second language. In Puerto Rico, we learn some English in school, but not enough to be conversational. So it was under that context back in 1989 that I decided then to join the United States Army when I was only 18 years old. Given then my lack of skills in the English language, the Army sent me to a 9-week English school before I could start basic training. Although those 9 weeks helped me with the basics of the English language, they really weren't enough to keep me from sometimes struggling during my training. Thankfully, I had a Puerto Rican friend who was from New York and bilingual and could help me to survive it. After graduating from basic training and advanced individual training, I also attended airborne school, where I basically learned how to safely jump out of airplanes. After that, I ended up landing in my first duty station, which was the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. During my first year there, as I was still learning and struggling with the English language, some of my fellow paratroopers sometimes would treat me like I was some kind of idiot who didn't know what was going on. Deep inside, that shit used to piss me off. Most of these fellow paratroopers happened then to share my same skin color, which was then that I began to learn about some of the realities about this country that I wasn't yet fully aware of. So after being in my unit for almost a year, we all then got called to go to the Persian Gulf to be part of the Gulf War in 1990-91. Since we were the 82nd Airborne Division, we were literally the very first one who arrived to Saudi Arabia to get ready to potentially fight the Iraqis. They put us then in the middle of the desert and had to build our own mini tent city. Well, the leadership at the time didn't take charge of our living arrangements and basically allowed everyone to pick their own tents. Interesting enough, we all ended up divided by race groups, the white tents and then the everyone else's tents. Guess which tent I ended up in? You guessed it right. Even if I wanted to be in the white tent, I knew then that I wouldn't be welcome. Anyhow, with such segregation, it wasn't long before we all ended up fighting one another. That's when the leadership realized they f***ed up, and only then ended up rearranging our living spaces. Ever since then, I understood which tent I belonged to. For years, I tried to get in their tent until I realized that I could build my own and be much better than theirs. In fact, that experience helped me to become the leader that I ended up becoming later on in the future. A little while ago, I made a video explaining how I personally came to find out which tent I belong to here in the United States once I joined the U.S. military from Puerto Rico. Ever since then, it's been my personal conviction that in this country there are only two separate tents by which one decides to abide in. So what exactly are those two tents? The tent of exclusive white supremacy and the tent of inclusive diversity. Everyone in this country belongs to one of these two tents. When Obama then became president, some people began to then gain consciousness as to which tent they belong to, in particular after the death of Trayvon Martin. I personally consider that a specific tragic event not only a clear turning point that began to drag us all back to the Jim Crow era, but also the key that opened the door to Trump ever becoming a possibility. It was at that specific event that many people who never realized before which tent they have always belonged to gained consciousness, where lines then began to be drawn all throughout our nation. Those who have always had implicit biases against black people came to realize that they were part of the white supremacy tent by taking sides with the obvious murderer, and those who were all along in the tent of diversity began to also understand which tent they have always belonged to. During that incident, there were people of all colors and backgrounds who realized they have always belonged to the tent of progressive inclusive diversity. But unfortunately, there were also many people from all colors and backgrounds who realized then that they mostly preferred to defend the digressive exclusive white supremacy tent. So in 2016, many who previously didn't realize before to be part of the white supremacy tent came in droves to vote for Trump. Ever since then, the lines have been clearly drawn. So my question to you today is, which tent do you belong today? Stay woke, people. Dale.
It was very eye-opening for me to see things through his eyes, because I realized that a lot of people from the Hispanic community, because of their skin color, they have more proximity to whiteness, right? So sometimes they have it easier blending into white spaces, benefiting from white supremacy. So for him, as light-skinned as he is, even though he's still a person of color, to have talked about how even though he was light-skinned and he felt he had that proximity to whiteness, he had a rude awakening from that experience. I was like, okay, this is nice. So after that video, I saw other videos of him expressing very strong opinions about white supremacy and America as a whole and stuff like that. And I'm just going to be playing his videos back to back.
That teaching the United States was built on stolen land. That is inappropriate for our schools. It's not true.
The very people who have made their purpose in life to go around telling other people that we are all guilty of our sins from the day that we are born due to what our first ancestors did at the very beginning of human history, and thereby indebted to their God and in need of redemption, are the same people who also proclaim that the egregious sins of their European ancestors is something that somehow we all need to pretend to have never happened for the sake of their children. Because to do so will force them to admit their guilt, and thus to also admit to still be indebted with a penalty that none of them are willing to ever pay, like their Jesus once did for them. These people are acting like their historical oppression is somehow just a thing of the past. Have any of these fools ever visited a Native American reservation or a city like Flint, Michigan lately? There truly are the dictionary definition of hypocrisy. Stay woke, people. Oh my goodness. Look at this shit here. Let me ask you this, Karen. What exactly is that I should be grateful of? For serving your own country for almost 22 years of my young adult life so you can have the freedom to be this ignorant? Or should I be grateful of your arrogance, sense of superiority, bigotry, and stupidity? Or maybe I should be grateful of your history of colonization, mostly defined by the evils of slavery and genocide? Or would you want me to be grateful of your orange dirt and his cult following destroying this nation? What exactly is that you want me to be grateful of? Because last I checked, contrary to your misguided beliefs, people like you should be grateful of people like me here on TikTok trying to educate your own children about you so they can be a much better people than you. Stay woke, mi gente. Dale.
This country isn't yours. You don't own it. It never was. There is no real America. You don't own it.
You don't own shit like you think you do. You don't own the right to tell me to get out what you think to be solely your country because this country was never yours to start with. You don't own the culture either, nor the power to decide what should or shouldn't be included in it. Particularly when your own culture is as flavorful as ketchup, salt, and pepper. You don't own religion, especially when your creator version of God seems to be such an intolerant asshole. You don't own the English language, let alone the way I should sound when speaking English, because after all, I know for a fact that most of you can even speak your own English language properly. Furthermore, you don't own the authority to tell me what I should or shouldn't read, because I know that most of you have never read a book past the 3rd grade level that you could actually comprehend. You don't own the definition of marriage either, nor the authority to tell me what my family should look like, especially when many of you are married to your own cousins. You don't own the idea of patriotism, when I know for a fact that most of you wouldn't have lasted more than a week in basic training when I was a drill sergeant in the army you think you own. And you don't own the right to decide who should or shouldn't vote. And most certainly you don't own the authority to determine which skin color has the most value. Since I see most of you anyway in your local time parlors trying to adopt a skin color that was never meant to go with your narrow mindset. The truth is, you don't own shit. Stay woke, mi gente.
Jesus was arrested and murdered by the Roman government.
Look at this woman here, comparing her golden toiletification to a Jesus who is literally the antithesis to their criminal fraud in chief. And then these people wonder why they are having such a hard time filling up their church's pews nowadays. This is precisely why I left the church and all of these people behind. And I used to be one of their pastors. Their insistence on portraying their version of Jesus as though he is just like them, an insecure, intolerant God who only loves and cares for self-righteous and judgmental people, while then despising the same other people they do, made me realize that their entire religion was and is as real as the skin color of their orange shirt. The truth is that if the real brown skin, brown eyes, curly hair Palestinian Jesus were alive today dwelling among us, he will be turning the tables all of these people's churches upside down. Not to mention that he will instead be hanging out with drag queens, supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, protesting against the slaughter of our children in our school by their guns, and will ultimately end up being crucified all over again by them who killed them once before for him not buying into their fake religious ways. Stay woke, mi gente.
Tired of trying to find a way to justify you being able to keep 75 guns in your house.
Well, I might know a few that have 75 plus, but you know what? None of them have gone and done anything nefarious with those 75 firearms because it's a mental health issue. It's not a how many firearms issue.
Hey, a 21-year career combat veteran here. Let me ask you this. Hasn't it ever occurred to you that wanting to own 75 assault rifles might be the very mental illness that you're talking about? And not only that, but if such mental illness do exist, isn't it most prevalent among men who look like you? Or hear me out. Could it be instead that rather than being a mental health issue like you are both claiming here, it might just simply be a man who looked just like you with assault weapons issue? Either way, it appears to me that this is your issue and no one else's. Stay woke, mi gente. Look at this here. And then they wonder why so many of us are rising up against their historical abuse. Not only that, but then she has the nerve to pretend that to be woke isn't even a thing that she knows anything about it. Even though most of them can seem to shut up about everything being woke nowadays. The truth is that the only reason these people act like they have no idea what it's like to be woke is because it is impossible for them to know what it's like and to experience it if they are purposely choosing to take sleeping pills to remain deeply asleep. Why is that, Karen? Have you ever asked yourself, why am I rather be deeply asleep? Could it possibly be because being awake and aware of your own history and reality is too much of a shameful and painful place to live in? So what do you resort to do instead? You choose instead to sleep in your fears, selfishness, false sense of superiority, and ignorance. That is also why you all decided then to elect the loudest and most selfish, boastful, and ignorant individual our country has ever collectively seen to represent your hatred and ignorance, while then hiding behind your church's pews to pretend to be self-righteous, unfairly persecuted, and innocent victims that you love to portray. Well, you might still be able to fool one another with that bullshit, but you can no longer fool the rest of us. Stay woke, mi gente. We Latinos need to unite together. I absolutely agree with you 100%, and that is precisely why I create this type of content. White supremacy clearly understands that a united Latino population is indeed their greatest threat, since we are the fastest and largest growing demographic in this country, especially if we decide to also unite with all of our brothers and sisters of color who are being equally suppressed by the evils of white supremacy. In other words, white supremacy's ultimate goal behind their strategic intimidation and indoctrination of us Latinos here in the US and all people of color for that matter is to either keep us insignificant or too busy licking their nuts, which unfortunately in both instances they have so far succeeded because we are not being united against our real enemies. Stay woke, people. Dale.
I'm not going to lie, I like how bold he is. There are a lot of things he's saying that I'm like, wow, yeah, I like the way he's thinking. This is someone that has obviously done the work and has enough pride in himself and what he stands for and his people. He's unashamedly Hispanic. And I also saw in one of those videos that he talked about people of color coming together against the white supremacy. So I know that this has always been a discussion. I've had a couple of videos where I talked about the whole allyship thing, and I've seen a lot of you guys express in the comment sections that the Latino and Latina people are not allies. Like, they pick and choose when they want to band with other people of color because they have their own proximity to whiteness. They too, they are dealing with their colorisms and all of that. So I think this man at this point, in as much as he's speaking as a Latino, he also realizes that it's going to get to the point where there's going to be some form of allyship between people of color in America to be able to fight white supremacy. So I want to know what you guys think about it. I think a lot of black people feel like black people don't really have any real allies. What do you guys think is ever going to get to a point where that allyship is going to form so that we can, as a unified front, fight white supremacy? Or do you think that black people can do it on their own, because at the end of the day, we are the only people we can trust? As a matter of fact, there are some of us that we can't even trust in the black community. I mean, oh, okay, so you guys just let me know what you think about what he said. Let me know your opinions in the comment section. Let's have a discussion. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. Also turn on notifications, that way YouTube will let you guys know whenever I have a new video up, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.